Let's take a look at the Analyze option in the Efficient Cause Analysis for Paired Orderings. Now, as you can see, we have two selections. We can choose Deep Structures or we can choose Numbers Ordinal. Now, if you choose Deep Structures, the analysis is going to be based on the units of observation as you have defined them in the Define Orderings window. In other words, it's going to be based on the deep structures. Now, that type of analysis, as we're going to see in a few moments, is going to be an absolute type of analysis. We're simply going to tally the number of times that the cause and the effect match up in terms of their units of observation. Now, by contrast, if you choose the Numbers Ordinal option, then the analysis is going to be based on the raw data. That is, the data as you have entered them into the data spreadsheet or data edit window, as you can see here. Now, that analysis is going to be relative. In other words, we're going to look at the relative changes between the cause and the effect over the various occasions or over time. So to make this clearer, I hope, let's take a look at some patterns. So we'll select Examine Patterns here, and we've already got Deep Structures selected as the option. And let's go ahead and magnify this a bit here. And let's take a look at the anxiety ratings. Recall that these are daily ratings of anxiety for one individual. We have 53 days of data. The red line indicates the anxiety rating scaled 0 to 10. The blue line indicates the stress ratings, again scaled 0 to 10, as you can see on the right here. Now, since we have chosen deep structures, the analysis is going to be based on those deep structures. Now, in this case, the deep structures are the same as the entered data, 0 to 10. So to see how the PCC is being computed, let's turn the lines off and notice that the lines have been replaced now by these squares. Let me turn those back on and notice how for day 1 the cause and the effect match up perfectly. They're both scored as an 8. And then for day 2, notice there's a difference between the two. Let's turn the lines back off, and now notice the green squares there indicate the perfect overlap between the cause and the effect. Here you can see the mismatch between the two and so forth. Now, if you just simply tally up the number of green squares here, you're going to arrive at 16, and that goes into computing the percent correct classification index. So that's why I refer to this as an absolute type of scoring technique. I'm looking for perfect overlap between the cause and effect deep structures. Now let's close this and now select Numbers Ordinal. I'm also going to select Adjacent here. I'll describe this option in a later video. Let's go back to the Examine Patterns. And let's go to Anxiety and let's magnify it up a bit here. Now notice the PCC now has changed. It's up to 70%. That's because the analysis is now being based on the relative changes between the cause and the effect. So notice from day 1 to day 2, both the cause and the effect decrease, then they increase, they stay the same, they increase, they decrease, and so forth. Now if you just tally up the number of adjacent increases and decreases that match up between the cause and the effect across the 53 days here, you're going to arrive at 35. So that number then goes into the percent correct classification. So again, you're looking at the relative changes between the cause and the effect across the occasions or time in this instance. But again, this analysis is being based on the raw data. Now in this case, they are the same. The raw data are 0 to 10. The deep structures are scaled as 0 to 10. Now let me go ahead and change that to help clarify this even further, I hope. Let's go to a data set. Let me cancel here actually. Let's go to a data set in which I've dichotomized the various feelings. So notice here it's 0 to 5 versus 6 to 10. And if I go down to the stress ratings, here's the first stress rating, it's 0 to 5 to 6 to 10 as well. So here the deep structures are dichotomous. So let's go ahead and go to the analysis now. Analyses, Efficient Cause Analysis, Paired Orderings. Let's go ahead and get these feelings moved over. 53 days worth of feelings there. Those are that is the cause, set of orderings, and then the effect are the stress ratings. And notice again, we've got deep structures as the option here. I'm going to turn on Adjacent, and then we'll look at the patterns. So now you can see that the deep structures have been plotted. So now everything is dichotomous. Now, since we've selected deep structures, we can turn off the lines here, and we see all of the green here indicating the perfect match in the deep structures between the cause and effect. And if we tally up the number of green boxes here, we're going to find 46, and that goes into the percent correct classification here of 88.46%. Now let's close this out, and let's select the numbers here and go back to the Examine Patterns for the anxiety. Now what's happening here is we are not looking at the relative changes in the deep structures. Again, the ordinal or numbers option is looking at the data as we have originally entered them. So that doesn't really match up with the picture that we're seeing here. Again, we've chosen the numbers ordinal option, and that is being based on the data that we've entered into the data edit spreadsheet. So now what we really need to do, since we've selected numbers ordinal here, and we have a mismatch between the raw data as entered and as defined with our deep structures, then it's best to look at the ordinal patterns button. So here, let's look at anxiety. Notice that I've removed the scaling. So here we're looking at the rankings of those anxiety ratings, and we're looking at the rankings of the stress ratings. And we've just plotted those rankings. So now we can see the decrease from time 1 to time 2, increase from time 2 to time 3, and so forth, after removing the scaling. So that's how we would get the PCC here. It's 35 matches here across the 53 days, and that's where we get the percent correct classification of 70%. And recall, we saw the same number earlier when we had the deep structures defined as 0 to 10, but that definition doesn't matter for this analysis. What matters for this analysis is how we have the data entered in the data spreadsheet. So that is the difference between the deep structures and the numbers options. The deep structures, you're basing the analysis on the units of observation as you have defined them. And you're looking at an absolute type of scoring system where you're just matching up the number of co-occurrences between the cause and the effect observations. And then for numbers, you're analyzing the data as shown in the data edit window. And there you're looking for the relative changes across the various occasions or across time between the cause and the effect. Now, the numbers ordinal option obviously assumes that the numbers you have entered into the data edit window represent at least ordinal relations between the persons or objects that you are studying.